What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturdays. Kind of like stuff going on out there. There's nothing really happening. So I was going to go over something today that I've often thought about, I've been thinking about for years, and figured, well, I don't really have anything else to talk about, so might as well get that out of the way. There's a couple things that I do have on the horizon. I want to do more past, present, and futures, and I want to do more missing, like where are they now companies. But as of right now, today what we're going to do is talk about this trifecta of Doka Toys, Gigapower, and Fanstoys, and how, in my mind, they all connect. I'll explain it. I don't know if it's true. It's 100% speculation. It's what I see from the outside looking in. It's just me talking. If you're interested in my opinion on it, I'm going to give it to you. If not, have a good day. But before we do, a little house cleaning. So, first and foremost, everybody last week was talking about how much they enjoyed the past, present, and future of Toy World Sit Down Saturday, and I love to hear it. I have more coming, but just as I hear that they're getting, shut down and everything, a new pre-order goes up for a Toy World Prime. So it's like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going off what I read, but that was kind of crazy. Secondly, the Sick of You Customs Top Spin. I just want to make sure that everybody understands. I'm never going to look at this stuff the same way, right? Like, I can never judge something like this. Something that was fan-made, fan-designed, and often put on a website for you to download free. Make sure you check those links in the description I put up the other day. I can never compare that to something that is marketed, has a rollout, has designers behind it, money behind it, production behind it, and then charges you a fee. Those two things are not the same, and they will always be judged differently. That makes sense, right? Okay, good. Moving on. Couple of Star Wars stuff I gotta clean up. Somebody pointed out to me that Rebel Assault wasn't mentioned in the LucasArts Sit Down Force Friday, and yeah, that's our bad. We do have a part 2 coming. I'm not sure if it's gonna be mentioned. It will be this week, but yeah, I mean, stuff falls through the cracks. Nobody's perfect, right? Sorry. Secondly, somebody mentioned in the Moff Gideon video that perhaps it's his eyelids, and I think they might be right. It might be the eyelids that's throwing the thing off, but yeah, well done. And the third thing was the Nick Nolte character from Mandalorian. Shoki's reviews pointed out to me that his hat can come off, so yeah, check that out. It's horrifying. I don't necessarily suggest you do it, but if you must, his hat will come off. It's not a good look underneath. He looks very bizarre. And I think that's it. I think with that we can get right into the business. So look, let's get into it. And I really want to stress that I'm just talking here. Like, this is just something that's been kicking in my mind though the whole time, pretty much. And I just want to take the opportunity to kind of discuss it with you guys. And not only discuss it, but it's like one of those things that keeps you up at night where you're like, man, I wonder if, and I got to deal with it. So now I'm putting it out there, and guess what? Now you got to deal with it too. So we're in this together. We're part of the same team. So I don't know if there's any connection here whatsoever. I don't know if I'm completely speaking out of my backside. I don't know if I'm way off course. I may be. I may need to stay on target, but there's kind of a lull and kind of hot button stuff that's going on out there. So I'm going to take the opportunity now to kind of get into this. So Fanstoys drops Shockwave, right? Whatever they called it. It was Quakewave. And it was kind of the shot heard around the world, right? Like, I remember at the time how it was so expensive, and I was thinking to myself, like, man, like, I don't know, $150 for something, that seems a little insane. How the tables have turned. But it shook things up. And it wasn't long after that where we started getting Scoria. And by Scoria, we kind of knew that something special was happening here. But we got a tease for a Jetfire, right? And a lot of people were super excited, myself included. And then we didn't get that Jetfire for some time. I don't know exactly what year Phoenix came out, but it was well after that initial reveal, which was around the same time as Scoria. If it wasn't around the time of Scoria's reveal, it was certainly around the time of Scoria's release. And they seemed like they were going to be producing a figure fairly regularly. I mean, in the sense of what third party was doing at the time, which was, kind of like 1 or 2, maybe 3 a year or something like that for the smaller figures. And we didn't get it, but we got an alternative. We got the Doka Toys Chronos, which was the subject of much controversy, and kind of is one of the linchpins of my channel that kind of put me on the map, as it were. I owe a lot to Doka Toys. I would buy Doka Toys a drink if I ever had the opportunity. But leading up to the events of Doka Toys, it looked like a really promising masterpiece scale Jetfire, and it seemed like Fanstoys was already changing the guard in terms of what was happening, that this was perhaps something that was coming from that it was a trickle-down effect, that the ball had started rolling and this was an effect of it. And then the Doka Toys Chronos released. And there was a bit of a rollout for it. There was heavy marketing for it. Review samples were sent, I believe. And to my understanding, the designer was attending conventions and stuff. New York Collectors Con, I believe, was one of them. and he was talking, and one of the rumors that started circulating from the communications that he was having was that he was at one point affiliated with Fanstoys in some regard. So then that got me thinking, right? Okay, so alright, he was affiliated with Fanstoys in some regard. There's a heavy rollout for this thing. It looks good, like aesthetically it looks pretty good. I'm going in. So I bought it. Turned out being what it was. I called it what I felt like it was. And I still think that he was on to something. That like he was probably 3 or 4 releases from getting something really nailed down. But because that piece was so expensive and because it was kind of had a lot of shortcomings that went along with it, it was just, it deserved, in my opinion, the beating that it got from me. A lot of times people misunderstand my perspective on things. Just because I'm rough on a product doesn't mean I don't think that there's hope for its future. It's just talking about that product in particular and the corresponding price point that goes along with that product. And then we don't hear anything from Fanstoys in a Jetfire for years. Follow me now. In the midst of that, Quake Blast comes out. Now, this is Gigapower's attempt at a shockwave. Now, I know what your little fingers are already busy typing. Wait a minute, Skullface. That wasn't Gigapower, that was Cloud9. They are one and the same, at least as far as I can tell. When Cloud9 hit me up, I asked them 3 questions. One of which was, are you Gigapower? And they did not answer me. For the sake of this conversation as to what came first, Gigapower's Dinobots or Cloud9 Shockwave, etc., it's not really relevant. I do think that the Shockwave was needed to gain money for their projects, but more on that. Let's just move along. Just when I say Gigapower Quake Blast, just know that I know it was by Cloud9. I just think that the difference between Cloud9 and Gigapower is the spelling. And they sent me a review copy. And I thought it was good. I also thought QuakeWave was good, so that kind of makes sense because it pretty much takes all of its engineering, right? It resculpts the entire thing, but it takes all of its engineering. And I kind of cleared it of any kind of KO stuff because even though it took the engineering, the whole thing had been completely redone. But I had a pretty engaging discussion with T2RX6 one time about it, and he kind of made me start seeing that maybe I didn't see it all the way clearly, and perhaps it had more KO tendencies than I was giving it credit for. Perhaps it deserved more of that label. But it had the engineering from Fanstoys, that was obvious, but it was completely new sculpt. So if it had access to all of the engineering and theoretically the tolerances and all the sorts of stuff that go along with that, how did it get it? Especially in a world where Fanstoys really hasn't been KO'd. How did it get it? Now you could say that someone could reverse do it, right? That you could take QuakeWave and break it down, but this seemed pretty close. Engineering-wise, tolerance-wise. It also theoretically would have been a cheaper investment, right? Because you don't have to work through the engineering has been provided for you. To this day, that figure still kind of boggles my mind and makes me challenge my own thoughts and beliefs in regard to KOs and what they mean. So, at this time, Fanstoys is actively working on Dinobots. And what do we get next from Gigapower? Dinobots. MP-scaled Dinobots. And they're good, for the most part. So follow my breadcrumb trail. Now you have Fanstoys making a QuakeWave, teasing a Jetfire. Daka Toys says they worked with Fanstoys, releases a Jetfire. Fanstoys doesn't release a Jetfire for years to come. Gigapower comes out of left field and they release a Shockwave. A Shockwave that takes the entire engineering from the Fanstoys piece with a completely different sculpt and paint, or deco if you'd prefer. Then, Gigapower starts announcing Dinobots, also MP scaled, but this time their own original engineering, but built to the same level, quality, and standard. Daka Toys releases teases, if memory serves me correct, and I'll try to find them, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to, of Constructicon heads, and I want to say reflector heads. Not too long after that, Fanstoys gives us a reflector. From that point forward, we never hear anything else from Daka Toys to my recollection. Gigapower continues their Dinobot. Fanstoys at some point in time releases teases for an Omega Supreme and it shakes the world. DX9 has plans for an Omega Supreme as well, and I have reason to believe that the designer of Daka Toys has done designs or worked alongside, at the very least, designers from DX9. So there's a connection there to me, and now DX9 is competing with an Omega Supreme. The only other real significant tease we ever get out of Gigapower is a tease for an Omega Supreme. Gigapower finishes up their Dinobots. They're doing re-releases of them that are painted beautifully, I might add, but we don't really see any new product from Gigapower for the rest. DX9 is going through all sorts of issues that we've just talked about on this channel recently, and Daka Toys as an entity fades into obscurity. And what we're left with is Fanstoys, which is probably the cream of the crop in that regard, with respect to Gigapower. And all I'm saying is that I see a connection there, right? So if you and me are working together, we're working together on something, as Daka Toys suggested that he worked with Fanstoys. There's some sort of falling out. You go your separate way from Fanstoys and you release a Jetfire that may very well have been your design when working with Fanstoys, but due to the split, you're taking your ball and you're going home. You release that Daka Toys Chronos. Fanstoys then has to completely redo theirs because they no longer have their design anymore. Their design has left the building. But they continue on with their other projects. Meanwhile, another company comes out, completely takes the engineering of Fanstoys' first product, then starts releasing competitors for Fanstoys in the same arena, only to tease a competition piece for the future. Daka Toys releases teases of upcoming future Fanstoys stuff as well, perhaps with the exception of Devastator. I'm saying all of that to say this. Whatever is going on between those three or went on between those three in the past seems personal to me. It seems like there was some toes stepped on to me. That somebody crossed somebody, and I can't say who. It could very well be that Fanstoys did Daka Toys wrong and that it went left from there. I don't know. But it seems like somebody crossed somebody and now people were out. And I bring this up because Fanstoys has often been confused of being a bully. Because somebody will release a design, Fanstoys will release the corresponding design, right? Somebody releases, and I don't know this to be true, I'm just talking off the side of my head, or the top of my head. Somebody will release a Springer design, Fanstoys says, hey, look, we got one coming. Someone will release this design, hey, look, we got one coming. There's a business advantage to that, right? Where you don't want people to buy something else if they'd rather buy your product and you're creating it and you want people to buy your product. So there's obviously a business advantage there. But as a result, they've often been accused of bullying. And they may very well have. I often think about their situation with the Make Toys headmasters where they took Weird Wolf and posed with the decapitated Make Toys headmaster as if to say, we're getting into this game now and we're coming for your head. To me, I can see how that would be taken that way. And all I'm suggesting is that perhaps they got it as good as they give it. Perhaps that there was these other things that happened in their history that they were like, it put them in a space. I definitely think that Daka Toys Chronos was the original Fanstoys Jetfire and they had to redo it. And when they split, it never went quite right. How that corresponds to DX9 having a Gabriel, how that corresponds to Gigapower having Quake Blast and the Dinobots, I don't know, but I would be lying to you if I said that I didn't feel like there was some connection to it all. And that's one of the things I think about. And I also want to say this, to be 100% transparent. I only judge people on how they treat and deal with me, period. Now, I may listen to what people say. I may watch from afar, keep my eye on, keep perspective on things. But I never make the judgment unless it happens to me. I'm pretty sure that I have a relationship, and I mean that somewhat casually, like DMs, correspondence, with the designer from Daka Toys. I want to say that I think that he is incredibly talented, and he has been nothing but a gentleman to me. So don't think for a minute that I'm saying this as any sort of personal attack on anybody, just objectively from the outside looking in. This is what I see on that game board. To me, being somewhat familiar with watching people navigate in a room full of vultures, as it were, looking at the pieces on the board, it seems like to me they are all related. And it's just something that I've noticed and never really spoken about here, and I thought I would take the time to do so. Hope you found it somewhat entertaining. Hope it wasn't a waste. And maybe I'm way off base, like I said. I do not know. Just one of my observations. It's something that I don't feel like people often talk about or bring up. If none of it's true, right? If none of it's true, then we still have to address why did the Fanstoys Phoenix take so long to come out? How did Gigapower get a hold of the engineering of Quake Wave unless they reversed it, which I think is probably less probable? Why did they do Dinobots? Why were they suggesting an Omega Supreme? Those are all answers that I would need to know in order to not be suspicious of it. And ultimately, I don't care. I just think this stuff is fun when you start to track it down. So I hope that was somewhat entertaining for a Saturday. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.